Welcome to chapter 26 of the book of Ezekiel. And it took place in the 11th year, day 1 of the month, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, and there we go again with the Logos Kyriou pros me, Ie anthropou, son of man, because Sor said against Jerusalem, well done, she was broken, she destroyed the nations, she was turned to me, the one full was made desolate. Now, all of these Sor said against Jerusalem, she was broken. Then he's talking about the people of Sor, which is actually Tyre. It's called Sor in the Hebrew, in other languages, and Tyros in Greek, and this is the same place. And it was up in Lebanon, which is north of Israel, and at that time. But it's not going to be at the time of the new city built on the high mountain that we'll get to towards the end of the book, where Tyre will then be part of Israel. But here it's not yet. These people in Tyre spoke against Jerusalem, saying, well done, she was broken. Israel destroyed nations, and she was turned to me towards Tyre, and the one full was made desolate. All these things, the opposite of what God wanted people to do, and we went through that in the 25th chapter. And these people of Tyre were doing that, glad over the destruction of Jerusalem. And as we go through and we find out about this city of Tyre, basically it was a city on the Mediterranean, right on the water, had a harbor that I believe was towards the north. And so you would come in and then you would go south to get into the harbor. I believe that's correct, but the city was split up more or less into two. It had a walled city, 20 miles or so, or 10, I don't know exactly how many, but inland, on the land, and then on an island was the island part of the city of Tyre, which dealt with all the traders and the boats, the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians went all over the Mediterranean, the Tyrians. They even went in as far as Carthage and northern, it's not Libya, I forgot which country that, anyway, it's in northern Africa on the water, and they founded the city of Carthage, which Hannibal Barca came from and attacked Rome later and almost destroyed Rome. And then they know that the Tyrians went all the way through the Pillars of Hercules and then up north in the Atlantic Ocean about 50 miles to the city of Cadiz, Spain, which was basically founded by these Tyrian Phoenician sailors and commerce people. So Tyre today is a city of about 117,000. And history shows that Nebuchadnezzar attacked Tyre in 586 to 573, but the history doesn't show if he ever went into the city itself, or here we'll get to it and we'll find out exactly what did happen. And then later Alexander the Great came against Tyre, built a causeway from the land out to the island and took the city. And then after that, the next thing we hear about was when Jesus went into Tyre and Sidon, up in that area, and that's in Matthew 15:21. And so here we've got in chapter 26, it's called Sor, and then in 27, it's called Sor again, but then it mentions Tyros at the same time. And then 28, we get into the ruler of Tyre, which is very interesting. And have to wait until we get there before we'll go through all of that. But it continues here. So after they said these things, God said, on account of this, thus says Adonai Kyrios, behold, I am against you, O Sor, and that's Tyre, and I will lead against you many nations, as the sea ascends with her waves, and using the nautical terms because it was on the ocean, the sea, well, the Mediterranean. And they shall throw down the walls of Sor, and that was the part that was on the land, and shall throw down your towers. And I will winnow her dust from her, and I will make her into a smooth rock. She will be for a refreshing of drag nets in the midst of the sea. So making it the smooth rock, we had that in the last chapter with Jerusalem. It's sort of a derogatory way of saying things are bad are going to happen. And it's going to be a refreshing place for drag nets in the midst of the sea. No power, just a place to wash your nets. For I have spoken, says Adonai Kyrios, and she will be for plunder to the nations, of which she was to the Babylonians, and then the people under Alexander the Greeks, and then probably the Romans. And her Thigateris, a daughter, transliteration there, and her daughters in the plain, that's the part of the city that was on the land, shall be done away with by sword. And they shall know that I am the Lord. For thus says Adonai Kyrios, behold, I bring against you, O Sor, Nabuchodonosor, king of Babylon from the north. He is king of kings, with horses and chariots, and horsemen and a gathering of many nations, exceedingly. So Nebuchadnezzar comes down, probably with the Medes and other peoples, and attacks Tyre, and exactly as it mentions here in the Bible. Like I also mentioned earlier, it doesn't mention any of this about Nebuchadnezzar ever going into Tyre itself, but here it says, this one will do away with your daughters in the plain, and he will appoint against you an advance guard, and will enclose you, and will put a trench around you, and will enclose upon you with a siege mound round about, and a surrounding of shields, and shall appoint his lances before you, and that was probably the part that was on the land. He will demolish your walls and your towers with his own weapons. From the multitude of his epon, hippopotamus, potamo is river horse, their dust shall cover you, and from the sound of his epion, and the trocon, wheels of his armaton, armaments, chariots, your walls shall be shaken at his entering your gates, as one entering into a city from out of the plain. So this is probably where he went into the part that was on land. With the hoofs of his horses they shall trample all your squares. They shall do away with your people by sword, and the support of your strength they shall bring down to the ground. And he shall plunder your force, and shall despoil your possessions, and throw down your walls, and shall demolish your desirable houses. Now, it doesn't say anything right here yet about the part that's in the water. This is probably all the part of Tyre that was on the land. And your stones and your wood and your dust he will cast into the midst of the sea. And he will rest up the multitude of your musikon, musicians, that's a transliteration, musikon, the musicians, and the phony, a sound, of your psalterion, psalteries. The psaltery that we know of today, Appalachia, is not anything close to what they say to the original psalteries, but they picked up that word and called those instruments. It's a bowed instrument that they use in Appalachia, psaltery, and they call it a psaltery. And in no way shall be heard any longer. And I will make you for a smooth rock. You will be a place for refreshing dragnets again. In no way shall you be rebuilt any more, for I, the Lord, spoke, says Adonai, the Lord. Now, I'm not exactly sure it's not going to be rebuilt anymore. I mean, there's still a city of Tyre, so either this is all in the future or the rebuilding it is not the same way. I'm not sure. For thus says the Lord to Tyre, shall not at the sound of your downfall, in the moaning of the travmatias, you can add that to your English derivatives book, trauma, the wounded, in the unsheathing of the sword, in your midst the islands shake? All the rulers of the sea shall go down from their thrones, and shall remove their mitras. Another word you can add to your derivatives book, a mitre, transliteration, something that the Pope wears, some type of a headpiece, and shall take off their colored clothes. They shall be startled by a change of state upon the earth. All the people, when that happens, are going to hear about it, because these Phoenicians were sailors all over the Mediterranean, so they'll find out if they're not getting their goods. They're not coming. What happened? How come we're not receiving things from Tyre? They're going to find out. They shall be seated and shall fear their destruction, and shall moan over you. And they shall take a lamentation over you, and shall say to you, Oh, how you were destroyed and deposed from out of the sea. So now we got the sea part of it. The praiseworthy city who is strong in her sea, even the one inhabiting her, the ones inhabiting her, the one putting her fear in all her inhabitants. Powerful city. This has been mentioned as actually being one of the few cities that has been described so much in the Bible outside of Jerusalem. The describing of a city, this was probably number 2, or right up there at the top. I can't think of any place else the city would have been described. Ephesus was described quite a bit also. And the islands shall fear from the day of your downfall. And the islands shall be disturbed in the sea. They were close to Cyprus and Crete, Rhodes, all the Greek islands, the Turkish islands, and then going into the Mediterranean, islands around Sicily and Sardinia, these islands in the Mediterranean. So the islands shall be disturbed in the sea from your expedition, Exodus, I guess, 1840.3. For thus says Legi Kyrios, again, thus says the Lord, whenever I should appoint you a city for being made desolate, as the cities not being dwelt in my leading the deep upon you, and much water shall cover you up. Now, this is something that might be happening in the future that he's talking about, that I will bring you down to the ones having gone down into the pit, and that would be in Hades, I would suppose, to the people of the Eon, and shall settle you into the Vathi, the depths of the Gi, earth. Vathosphere was a round, globe-like metal object that was put into the ocean, back in the 1950s or so, and went down thousands of feet to the ocean. They call it the bathysphere. As an eternal desolation with ones going down into the pit. Now, I think when we go to chapter 28, you'll see that the Tyre he might be referring to is the Tyre of the ruler of Tyre, which I believe is in the future, and we'll go through that when we get to chapter 28 on who I believe he is and how and why. But I believe this part of the prophecies, because it does change, for thus says the Lord, whenever I should appoint you a city for being desolate. So, I mean, it doesn't say that was happening right then. Could have been thousands of years in the future, which I believe it is. I will appoint you so that you should not be inhabited upon the land of life. And I will appoint you for destruction, and you shall not exist any longer. And you shall seek and not find into the eon, says Adonai the Lord. Again, I believe that part of it is all goes into chapter 28, and you'll see that when we get to 28. But it continues against Sor in chapter 27. It's too bad that they broke these up and didn't make them just one giant chapter, but they didn't. So we will break off here, and we'll continue in the next video seminar with chapter 27 and Sor. Hope you'll join us, and God bless.